it's Barbara from Divine Creative Love, and today I'm super excited to share with you one of my favorite techniques, which is heat embossing. Heat embossing just gives such a neat three-dimensional effect for cards, and I've actually started using it recently in my Bible journaling as well, so I'm excited to show you that and share with you some techniques. But first, if you're new to embossing, there's two different ways that you can go about it. So you can start with some colored pigment ink that you already have, and then just get some clear embossing powder to use with your colored inks. So that's what I do most of the time, because before I started embossing, I already had a large collection of the pigment inks. But you can also start with clear embossing ink, and then just buy colored powders, such as the gold powder that I have here. So I've bought a lot of the gold and sparkly powders to use with clear ink. And another tip that I have for you, this is something that I just learned recently. So I have this anti-static pouch that when I rub it on the paper, it helps the embossing powder not stick to parts of the paper that I don't want it to, that aren't part of the stamped image. So I don't know if it's the paper that has static on it or the embossing powder itself, but that just helps prevent it from being a little messier. Like you can see in this example, how the white embossing powder is stuck to other parts of the paper and not just the stamped image. So that little anti-static pillow helps a lot with that. So I'm going to speed up the video here so it's not going to be super long. And we're going to start with our first heat embossing technique, which is to emboss with multiple colors of embossing powder. So this is good if you're starting with clear ink and you have different colored embossing powders and you want to combine them. So you can see I'm using the anti-static pouch to make sure that the paper doesn't have any extra static on it. And then I'm just started with the stamped image in the clear ink. And then you can just add a little bit of color in one color to start with. And put the rest of that back. And you can see I just covered the rest of it in the black. So we've got like a purple and black combination going on there. And I did miss a few spots, so I just went back in there and added a little extra for those spots. I just love that black sparkle powder. It's so pretty. You can't really see on the video, but it's got like little bits of rainbow of colors in with the black. And then there's still, even in spite of the anti-static pouch, there's still a few little specks left on the card, so I always just use a little brush to brush those off. And then I had forgotten to use one of my other new favorite tools, which is the little tongs that help hold the card away from my hands, because otherwise the heat gets pretty hot. And I'll link to all these cool tools down below, so if you're interested, you can find those links below. And then I'm cheap. I just use a little bit of water and a paper towel to clean the stamps off. So then the next thing I'm going to do here is do a single color stamp and then go back in and do another color with it. So once you've set the first color, once you've heat set it and the powder has melted, then you can still go back in and add a different color, and the heat won't affect the first color. So you can see again how this bits of embossing powder can still stick to the page. And I really do think the glitter embossing powders, which I love, I think those probably have a lot more static than some of the other ones, like the clear or the plain white or colored embossing powders. But I love the glitter, so I'm willing to take the little extra step of brushing the excess glitter off. I wish you could see more on camera. I tried not to block your view too much to see the embossing powder kind of melt, but it's still just, you can't see it as well on camera as I could in person. But it looks really cool. Like, to see it melt right before your eyes is just one of the cool things about embossing. So this time I'm just adding a little more of that little firework image, and I'm going to do this one in gold. So it won't affect the one that I already heat set. So it's already melted on the page. So then I'm just going to melt the gold powder. And I actually just realized that I completely forgot to melt the gold powder on camera. I just saw this video and went back and looked at the card, and sure enough, the gold powder just came right off. I never did melt it, so that's crazy. So I'll have to go back and redo that one. Anyway, moving on to your heat embossing technique number 2, which is one of my favorites. I just love this. I can't get enough of this technique. It's called reverse embossing. So you're basically just embossing a white image with white powder onto a card or Bible journaling or whatever you want to use it for, and then you're coloring in behind the image so it looks like really cool reverse white image. So you can see I've got this really cool stamp. It's like little butterflies and flowers and things, and I'm just using a big portion of the stamp, not the whole stamp, but a big enough portion of the stamp to cover that card size, and just using clear ink and stamping it down really good, and you can see how pretty that's going to be. So then for this I just use white powder. The first time I tried this technique I actually made the mistake of using clear powder, and it did not show up nearly as well. So use white powder and then just let it kind of fall down to cover the rest of the page. And then with the, you'll notice too, I actually forgot to use the anti-static pouch on this card, but it worked out because I think the white embossing powder, for whatever reason, it doesn't stick to the paper as much. It just had that little bit in the corner that stuck to where I didn't want it to go. So you can get by without the anti-static little pillow, but it is helpful to have. It just depends on the embossing powder and the paper that you're using. Some things will stick to the paper more so than others. And I really don't know how I got by with before I had those little tongs, because the heat tool really does get pretty hot. So you can see I've actually stopped and repositioned it a little bit because I could still feel the heat on my hand. And it did take, longer to heat up the whole card versus doing just a small image. So you can see how cool this looks now that it's all melted. And you can see how even cooler it looks when you add like watercolors or gelatos to the page. It just really, really pops the white design. Okay, so this is technique number 3, which is really cool. Even if you don't have stamps, you can just get these embossing pens and just draw your own image with the pens, and then just apply whatever embossing powder that you like. So for the sake of this demonstration, I just, drew something simple. So got this heart that I'm going to do in purple. and that was using the the brush tip embossing pen. And again, I forgot to do the anti-static before I started, so it sticks a lot more. I can still see a lot of specks left on there, so don't make the same mistake that I do. To keep forgetting to use the anti-static pillow to reduce the amount of powder that sticks to the paper. So then I went in with the bullet tip pen and added this little "love you." And that's going to be in gold. And again, you can see how much that powder is sticking. Like, I was thinking, why did I forget to use the anti-static on there? So you can see how cute that is. You can just draw your own little drawing and emboss it, and you don't even have to use stamps. Okay, so I'm slowing this back to real time. I'm going to show you some experiments that I've done in my journaling Bibles. So this I just did with the embossing pen in my little pocket New Testament, which turned out really good, except you can see how dark it shows on the other side of the page. So ultimately I decided I'm not going to be embossing in this particular Bible because the Bible text is on the opposite side of each page, so I didn't want that kind of dark shadow showing on the other side of the page. But I did use embossing powder in my illustrating Bible, and that works out a lot better. The paper is thicker with the illustrating Bible. So you'll see here in a minute, just even though it showed up on the back side of the page, it didn't matter as much because the text is not on the back side. It's just the margin. And I just love how this page turned out. So I did the word shine with the black sparkle embossing powder, which I wish you could see on camera how many little rainbow specks there are in that embossing powder. It just looks fantastic. It really drives home the point. So with the Bible journaling, it's a little trickier the way that you have to manipulate the page to, if you have your embossing powder, to tap it off. It's a little trickier, but it's not that hard. It's just a little different technique. But you can see how it still looked pretty dark on the back side of the page. Definitely showed through much more than the rest of the design did. So if I wanted to go back and do a journal on that page on the back side, I would just have to do something that would completely cover that up. But still, I love the effect that it created for that particular page. And I also tried embossing in my regular journaling Bible on a gessoed page. And it works just fine on a gessoed page, just like it would on a regular page. So you can see the little pink dove at the top of the page. That's what I embossed. And that color, since it was so light, it doesn't show through very much on the other side. The gel pens actually showed up more than the dove did. So that actually worked out really well. And I actually used one of my pigment ink colors for that dove, because I have this really cool white sparkly, see, I got the wrong one. Wait, there it is. So it's the bridal tinsel embossing powder, which is like a white kind of rainbow sparkly powder. And by itself, it actually doesn't show up very well, but combined with the pigment ink color, it actually created a really neat effect. So you can see by itself, it was almost transparent on the colored paper that I tried it on. So that's why I decided to experiment with adding some colored pigment ink to it, and that just works really well. So that's probably how I'll use that bridal tinsel color from now on. So I just really like how that embossing is working out in my journaling Bible. If y'all want to see future Bible journaling videos that include embossing, let me know in the comments. And thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, be sure and subscribe to my channel so you won't miss any of my future videos. Bye!